I went from drinking to meth again. And when I tell you I went to meth, I went full blown, like the epitome of a tweaker. I did not care anymore. My name's Stephanie and I'm an addict. So let me think about this. I was born in Iowa, small little town, Ames, Iowa. A year later, my mom and dad, I'm the youngest of 5 full-blooded siblings, 3 brothers, 2 girls. My mom and dad moved back over to Illinois. They got divorced when I was right after I turned 5. And my mom moved into this huge house, and 6 months later married our landlord. He has 6 kids of his own, and he had custody of the youngest ones. The rest of them were older. He was 15 years older than my mom. So in total, I'm the youngest of 11 siblings. I grew up with all of them in one way, shape, or form. We ended up moving out to this little town called Buckingham, Illinois, about an hour or so south of Chicago. My childhood wasn't horrible, but I will say this, when my mom and dad were together, that wasn't a good relationship. They were together about 14 years. My dad is a drug addict and an alcoholic, and he was, we'll say, somewhat abusive, without trying to put him on blast, to my mom and my brothers. I only know what I've been told. I was really young, so I'm not gonna delve too deep into that, but my childhood wasn't horrible. My mom and stepdad raised me pretty good, but I was the youngest, so like by the time I hit 12, 13 years old, and after all the emotional and verbal and physical abuse that my mom had been through, along with just her not being able to mentally handle a lot of things anymore, she kind of just stopped caring as much, right? So like, I was in sports most of my school years. I played basketball for 8 years. I went to state 2 years in a row in track. Got like 3rd place at state. You know, like I would have gotten scholarships had I pursued that or continued to pursue that into high school. But from my 8th grade year to my 9th grade year, something changed. A lot of adjustments at home. I was really, really close to my oldest blood brother. He was almost like a father figure to me. And he had moved out, and he had gotten with somebody, and they had gotten pregnant, and so his focus was more on his family, which is to be expected, but I was young and attached. He was a lot of the reason why I played sports. He was a huge influence in my upbringing, very positive, huge influence in my music taste, all the things, right? So somewhere between that time period, 8th and 9th grade, something flipped in me, and I turned really dark. I had, so I have a brother that lives down here. He lives in Jacksboro, actually. He and I were really close. We were really close in age, and he was a disruptive teenager, very disruptive. Ended up having to go to rehab, inpatient rehab, for 6 months. Ended up, I think he got arrested a couple of times. He robbed people. He was put on Ritalin and at a young age and would abuse it. And, he was directly older than me. So like, I kind of followed that. I was highly influenced by that. So he got put on I think it was after he got sent to 6 months inpatient rehab. I can't remember if it was after or before, but nevertheless, he got put on house arrest. So like juvenile house arrest, where he could not leave. So we'd party upstairs. Mom's crashed out on the couch downstairs, and we'd party upstairs, and it was like nothing else mattered. And that was the vicious cycle. So it went really quick into, 13 years old to 15 years old. When I hit my sophomore year, I was doing I don't even know how many drugs, right? So like my freshman year, I started doing cocaine in the bathroom at school, and I would come home and steal a Xanax from my mom that she was, prescribed. She didn't abuse them at the time. And it just got really, really bad. So I guess about 6 weeks into my sophomore year, I overdosed on 8 different narcotics. They had to haul me out of the school. It was really, really bad. They had to, back then, I don't even know how far back Narcan goes, but they had me coherent enough at the hospital to get me to drink the charcoal, the black charcoal stuff. Otherwise, because I can remember them threatening me to have to pump my stomach. And I was like, oh no, we're not doing this. So I drank the charcoal stuff and flipped out on a few doctors, and I was in ICU for like 3 days, I think. I could be wrong. And then they sent me to a psych ward. All age group too. It wasn't like a juvenile psych ward. It terrified me for 5 days. That was so long. The longest 5 days I had ever spent at that time. Totally terrified me. You've got older people in the corner like mumbling to themselves, and I can remember this little black boy was so scared, and he was younger than me, and I'm just like, where in the heck am I? So that was scary. They expelled me from school. Could not come back. They sent me to a SALT program. It's an acronym for Students All Learning Together. So we are going to this, kind of yuppier country school, and I get sent to the ghetto in Kankakee, Illinois, to this tiny little building it was completely different. It was supposed to be for 3 hours a day. You sit in the classroom for a month at a time for 3 hours a day, and then you take a test, and then you move on to the next class. I think that lasted 6 weeks or so. And about 3 weeks before, because I started skipping instantly, about 3 weeks before my 16th birthday, I went to my mom and I told her that she's wasting her time bringing me to the school every day, 25 miles one way and back. And I'm skipping, and I'm not going to finish school. At the time in Illinois, you could quit school at 16 and move out if you wanted to. And that's what I did. So I moved out with my boyfriend. To roll this a little bit forward, my parents ended up, I had been out of the house for 9 months. My parents ended up moving to Missouri and tried to take me with them, and I had already been out of the house that long, so I threw a fit, and they took me with them, and 5 days later sent me back to Illinois on a Greyhound bus. And this is the beginning of my Greyhound journey, because I've been on a lot of Greyhound buses. Went back to Illinois. My dad picked me up. That was crazy. He threw a bag of roaches at me and told me he was going to go back to bed. Like pot roaches, not like bugs. He lived in a garage apartment with this lady. So that was fun. I ended up leaving, and next thing I know, my oldest blood brother got guardianship over me a few months later, or a month later, whatever it was, and tried really hard to help me. At this time, he had 3 little kids. So he was doing the best he could, and I was not with it. I get back with the boyfriend that I had been with. We ended up pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant. I took like 4 P tests, and it came back negative, but like my body was acting weird. I was 17. Ended up going and taking a blood test, and it come back positive. So about what should have been 5 months along, I went into full labor and went to the hospital. And what had happened was that the baby had died at 6 weeks, but my uterus and body kept growing as if I was pregnant still. So it was just throwing off mixed signals, and I couldn't pass the miscarriage. So they treated me like shit, because I was 17 years old on my parents' insurance still. My parents don't live in state, so they treated me like shit, and they did a DNC on me with me wide awake. That's something that you have to be put to sleep to get done. I'll never forget that. I blood curdled screamed throughout the whole hospital. So not long after that, I moved to Missouri, finally. My mom came and got me. And about 2 months after living in Missouri, her and my stepdad moved to Tennessee. And I stayed in Missouri. Okay. To say that I had abandonment issues is probably an understatement. And the whole time, so I didn't look at it like that because I was never a victim, right? Like, I was the cause of my circumstances. Nevertheless, that I was a child or not, I was the cause. And I thought that I messed up. Like, I thought that, you know, I had moved out of my mom's house or whatever, and I had taken that away from my mom, you know, because I was ruthless. Like, I was not one that you wanted to deal with, you know, and at that time, my mom just couldn't handle anymore, so I get it. So she moved to Tennessee. I stayed in Missouri. I got with this guy from California. We got our own place, was working in Branson, making like $15 an hour back in, 2003? Mm-hmm. At 17. I was like rolling in big dough back then, you know? And we moved my brother in, Andrew, because he was there, the one that lives here. We were always like partners in crime. No matter where one went, the other one eventually followed. And moved him in, got him a job. He had gotten into some trouble. And we started doing meth. 18, right after my 18th birthday. And it was nothing like cocaine, right? So you do a tiny bit and stay up for days. And it was like a super drug. So that went south really quick. Ended up getting raided, doors kicked in, everything flipped over in my house. I was not there at the time when they raided it. Went back and everything was demolished and the locks were changed on my doors, and ended up moving to California. Got a ride out there. The idea was to get off meth. We're gonna move to Cali and get off meth. Dumb. We were gonna take over my boyfriend's grandparents' business. She was teaching me payroll and he was roofing. And I don't know, maybe a few weeks into being in California, we got in touch with one of his family members and we got high, you know? Next thing I know, several months later, I don't even know really exactly how long I was there, probably 8 or 9 months. Several months later, I'm finding myself in this crackhead motel, up on the sink, I'm 18, you know, scared out of my ever-loving mind, thousands of miles away from my mom, and all I want is my mom, you know. We finally got honest and told his grandma that we were using and that we needed to get a ride back. So she put us on a Greyhound bus. 3.5 days on that Greyhound bus. The bus broke down in Arizona at one time. It was like 118 degrees in the shade. It was like middle of summer. There's no shade in Arizona unless you find a big ass cactus. It was insane. So me and Travis was his name. He's dead now, but so he and I took a Greyhound bus over here to Morristown, Tennessee, where my parents were in a camper they had just bought land out in Mooresburg, Tennessee. They were staying at the campground, Everhart Campground out in Russellville. And it was a fifth wheel, it was about 36 foot, something like that. So there's like them two, their dog, and then us two in this camper. And I'm coming down off probably the best dope I've ever done in my life. And I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. This is so much. I sent Travis back to his mom a week later. She was in Missouri. He's a lunatic. He's hilarious, but he's a fucking lunatic. So I sent him back on a Greyhound bus to his mom, and about 3 weeks later, I called a couple people from Chicago, and I said, you gotta get me out of here. I can't even understand these people. It was so bad, and you know, it's home now, of course, but So I go back up to Chicago area, so like Kankakee, which is about an hour south still, and find myself indulged in ecstasy and cocaine again. Get with a dealer, because I always had to be with a dealer, and we ended up get into a physical fight, and my brother from the city, my brother Matthew, he's the middle of us five, he came down with a couple of his buddies, looked like big bad bikers, you know, and rescued me. Literally pulled me out of there, threatened that guy up and down, got all my shit, and took me up to the city. So for about, I want to say over a year, probably 14, 15 months, I lived northwest of downtown Chicago, about 2.5 miles northwest. Humboldt Park, which is like Little Puerto Rico. I worked in Wicker Park at a cafe. That was probably the funnest year of my life, because I was like drinking and smoking, but I wasn't like irresponsible. Held down a job, I paid my bills. I didn't have any responsibilities but paying my bills and holding down my job. I didn't have any kids yet or anything. And it's like so much happened in such a little bit of time, but it makes for a good story. So then me and my brother started fighting a lot. He had a baby, and I was ready to spend some time with my mom. You know, I finally got grounded well enough. You know, my mind cleared well enough. Now I was drinking every night just about, but I wasn't spun out, and I wasn't on pills, and I wasn't on heavy drugs, that I was able to, okay, I need to go spend time with mom. You know, so I ended up moving down here October 1st, 2006, sorry. And my parents had already started building the house. They were almost finished out in Mooresburg. They bought 10 acres of land. It's beautiful property. Built like a log cabin-like house, and they let me stay in the camper. And I got a job at Cooks by the Creek back then when they were open. And I paid them rent, and I paid my electric bill, you know, and months later, not quite a year, I met a guy, and we ended up being together for 8 years and had 2 kids. And through that whole time, from day one, pills was introduced to me. Not that I hadn't dabbled, but it was on another level. So I will say this, and I don't ever judge anybody for doing it differently, but when I got pregnant with both of my kids, I did get clean. Instantly. I was 6 weeks pregnant with both of them when I found out. It was weird. I was the same weight and everything, and I immediately cold turkey stopped. I was not doing that to my children, you know. So I was able to do that. That's good. But as soon as I had the baby, and I had a C-section with both, they gave me Percocets. You know, and it went from Hydros, Percocets, Roxys, Oxys to Opanas. Opanas were the devil. I might as well be doing fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And the last three or so years of my 9-year opiate use was Suboxone. So I wanted off of it the whole time. I hated it. I hated my life. I hated the runaround. I hated every bit of it. I hated that, you know, I fought with my kids' dad all the time. But I couldn't. I was suffocated, you know. It gets a hold of you. And so 2015, it got bad. He started dabbling, well, we'll say 2014, he started dabbling in meth, and I was doing a little bit, but he was doing more because he was running with my brother. And I saved up $2,600 working at a Shell gas station in Rutledge. And I had the guy that owned the place or ran the place save it in the safe there. And February 11th, my brother Jacob, my oldest brother, came down. I sent him $1,200 of it, and I said, come and get me and my kids now. And I got 14 Suboxone. I took the rest of that money up to Illinois, and it was middle of winter, and I tapered myself down in an apartment in South Chicago. South side of Chicago is not pretty. And I had been in the mountains for 9 years, you know? So My first sick day off of opiates was March 9th, 2015. I will never forget it. But I didn't know. I knew I was an addict, but I didn't know the extreme. I didn't know that I will always be seeking something outside of myself, you know, unless I get some kind of spiritual connection, unless I find acceptance or, you know, understand the internal work that you have to put in to really step away from that. So I ended up, because I was so cold, it was like 40 degrees below zero the night that I got there, snow everywhere. It was so freaking cold. And when I went completely off of the Suboxone, it's just, that detox is just, you'll never understand it unless you know, unless you've been through it, you know? So I had a bottle of Jack Daniels sitting there, and it's freezing, and my kids are hungry, and I don't want to get up, and I'm like, fuck it, I'll drink some Jack. I'll warm up. It'll make me sick at first, but I'll keep drinking it, because then you get past that point. So then for like a year, I find myself lost in a liquor bottle. I mean, when I say lost in a liquor bottle, from the time I wake up to the time I pass out, and then if I get up to pee in the middle of the night, I'm drinking vodka, because it went from Jack to vodka. And it was cheap stuff. And the reason the way I knew that I was so addicted to it was I went to work. I was working night audit at a hotel. And I went to work that night, and I always put vodka in a water bottle and brought it with me. And I grabbed an actual water bottle of water. And I was so sick that whole night, detoxing without it. It was so, so bad. And then Christmas of 2015, the guy that I was living with, we ended up getting into a fight. We were living in the back part of this house of his grandparents. And she kicks me out on Christmas, me and my kids. So the next day, my kids' dad and their uncle, who's in active addiction still, who's been in active addiction the entire time, comes down and gets me and the kids. He takes the kids to his mom's house, please, you know. And about 4 days later, I go down to Texas. My dad's down there. My biological father. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. I think I was 28, maybe 29. I hadn't seen him since I was like 18, 19, something like that. Had never been an adult around him. So he tells me he's going to show me how to be a functional addict. Okay, it worked. It worked until it didn't. It worked, so I worked with him, and then I got a job, you know, working at a restaurant in Porter, Texas. This is Houston area. And about 6 months later, I bring my kids down there because I didn't want to take them with me. I didn't know what I was walking into. I didn't want to put them in any more harm's way than I already have. So about 6 months later, because I still have full custody, I go back up to come back up to Tennessee, bring my kids down there with me. I was dating a Mexican at the time, and my dad is not fond of people. So he had kicked me out of his apartment or whatever, and so we were kind of like couch riding it with the kids, which was stupid. And then he finally lets me come back. And next thing I know, I had a guy over, a white guy, one night that he stayed at his girlfriend's house after a gig, because he's a musician. But a musician, that's his main love in life, is his bass. And he had a gig the night before, and I had this guy over, and next thing I know, he's stomping up the stairs of this apartment, and he comes in and beats the crap out of him and tries to beat the crap out of me, and my kids are holding themselves, and I've got him blocked by a pillow, and he's slinging my head all over the place, and it's bad. So he put me up in a hotel room in Porter, Texas, for 2 nights paid, told me to go back to hell where I belonged, because I was an un-American slut. And I forgive him. I forgive him. I understand. You're angry. I get it. I don't care. I don't hold no grudges. I'm not a grudge holder. So I ended up staying there for 2 nights. Some outlaw brothers come up, helped me out through people I knew. two of the most respectful, upstanding people I've ever met in my life came and got me and my kids, because I didn't know what else to do, and brought me down to South Houston. I couldn't talk for probably 12 hours at least. I mean, it was probably a whole day before I could actually put a full sentence together after they picked me up. And once I finally got away from North Houston, I was so terrified that he was going to show up. And they let me stay there for a week. And my kids' dad comes down and gets me again, and his brother. And each time that he did that, it was his mom that pushed it, right? Even though we didn't like each other the whole time, she really, really made sure that those kids were not going to be put in harm's way anymore. So they came in and got me a week later, and I come back here, and I'm going to jump back for a minute because my mom had passed away in 2012, May 1st, 2012. And that whole thing was probably the tailspin on my active addiction, right? I had to pick her dead body up off of the floor. My stepdad slapped me on the shoulder and told me, she's not alive, you need to help me move her. That whole thing, that trauma put so much on me, you know, and the abuse from my dad. And then there was two occurrences when I lived in Illinois before I moved to Texas, that my brother beat me up or tried to beat me up, and then a friend slung. It was like thing after thing after thing after thing. And so then I come back to Tennessee after Texas. I asked the kids' grandma to just watch them until I can figure out what I'm going to do. And next thing I know, for the next 3.5 years, and this is the last of my active addiction, I catch 11 charges in 3 weeks of being there. I finally get my first drug charge, but it was like a little drug charge, so I didn't get like felony time or anything. And throughout the course of all my active addiction, from age 24 when I caught my first DUI on Opanas, to the very end of my active addiction, I couldn't tell you how many times I've been to jail. I was on probation in 3 different counties. Granger County for 11 years in total. Hawkins County for like 3 or 4 years, and then Hamlin County for about 3 years. So I owed Washington County and Knox County. Just stupid little shit, you know? And so the last 3.5 years, it went from drinking, catching those. I wrecked a car, my kids were in it, it was really bad, that no one got hurt, but it really messed with them. I went from drinking to meth again. And when I tell you I went to meth, I went full blown, like the epitome of a tweaker. I did not care anymore. I was just like, fuck it, you know? I'm gonna go get lost in the mountains for 3 years and not know who I am, not know if I'm talking to a real person or not, you know? I had just fell into such a self-pity. My life is shit. I blame you, you know, so I'm going to just self-destruct, you know. And in the midst of that 3.5 years, actually, December 2017, let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, my kids, grandma got full custody of them. I think it was officially granted to her January 2018 is what the paperwork says. But they had been staying with her, and I would come and see them when I could. Their dad would bring them to me so he could get high, you know, because of course I was a dope dealer again. And so it was crazy, man. They went to Georgia with their dad for a little while. I finally got a ride over there because he had no rights to do that before custody was stripped from me. And they remember all of this, you know, for the most of it. And finally brought him back over here because it was just a mess after a mess after a mess. I got with this guy who took my phone and took everything from me. We were back in a holler, 7 miles in, across from a dead end sign. Would not let me have any external communication, hardly at all, unless he was involved. He was physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally abusive. I mean, to an extreme. And I thought that I deserved it, right? I thought that because I had done all this horrible stuff, that this is my karma, you know? Fuck it, I'll just get high and deal with it. So, after that, the last year of my active addiction, I was homeless. I was completely homeless. The guy that I had been with, we were broke up. In the midst of the breakup, right towards the end, I moved back to Texas for 2 months with my dad to try to get clean, and that didn't work out. So I moved back here, was completely homeless, had endocarditis and ran septic, was hospitalized like 5 different times in ICU. My organs were like gonna shut down. It was really, really bad. I was the biggest burden on everybody's lap that I ended up at their doorstep. You know, I had stuff scattered everywhere. I got with this guy again, you know, cause it's just misery loves company, you know? So, we ended up getting arrested together. We were in a stolen car. He stole it from the guy that stole it from the guy. It was like partially spray painted, and he couldn't drive a stick for shit. So I was like, get the fuck out of the driver's seat. I will drive this. Ended up freaking out. This is the night I got arrested. I freaked out because we were just really high. And I was like, I gotta get out of this holler. Like everything was closing in on me. I go out to Lakeshore Road, and there goes a cop. It's the middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, something like that. There's a cop going this way. We're gonna go this way. We have like no gas. He boosts Walmart for stuff, and I'm just the driver. So the only Walmart open and easy to boost was Rogersville. And so we drive down this way a little ways, and surely though that cop's down the way, right? So we turn around. No. That cop was still going really slow that way. And I'm coming around, and I'm probably driving really fast. And every time I top a hill, I see them taillights in front of me. And I'm like, I know that's that cop. You know, when we come up to this straightaway before the bridge, and surely to God, I come up around that curve, and he's blue lighted. There's a civilian right here parked. And he's parked in front of the civilian in the middle of the night, and he's lit up like a freaking Christmas tree. And I'm like, nope. Pop that son of a bitch in reverse. And I go probably about a mile and a half in reverse on Lakeshore Road, and e-brake it into this lake house, because that's smart. It was insane. We went running. John goes this way, and I go this way, and he's wearing a swishy coat. And I'm like, take the fucking coat off. It was ridiculous. Long story short, he gets tased. We get arrested. There's like 8 cops that roll up on us. It is so dumb. So dumb. I only get a personal criminal impersonation charge and paraphernalia because John told them my wrong name, and I went with it. Oh, well, whatever. They knew me, though, and I knew I had warrants, so whatever. Ended up getting arrested. I sit in jail. I don't go to court for 2 weeks. I'm sitting in the holding cell for court. The guys are in there, so the women are waiting. John comes back. The guys come back, and John yells, "Baby, ask for rehab." I said, "You can do that? Ask for rehab." Never occurred to me that was a thing. Never occurred to me. I was so ignorant to knowing anything about recovery. Anything. I think I played the system and had to go to like AA meetings so I can get my Suboxone and Klonopin at one time, but you know, that didn't last long. And so I went in there, and I'd been up all night on commissary. And the attorney comes up to me and says, "Are you Miss Allison?" I said, "I am." And he said, "I can't help you." Well, we got off to a good start. And he says, "No, it's conflict of interest. I'm the only attorney in court today." He says, "But you'll talk to the DA." I'm like, "Great." So George comes over, the DA, and he says, "We're going to go ahead and OR you out." What? Extend and revoke. Do another 1129 on top of the 9 1129s that I've done in that county. Because that's smart. Y'all are smart. Mm-hmm. You're dumb. And I was like, "Can I stop you there?" And he's like, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "Can I ask for rehab?" He said, you sure you want to do that? I said, don't give me choices, man. I'm going to fucking die. Like, I'm going to die. Don't give me an option. He says, if you're sure. I said, yeah, go talk to somebody. So he went across the way, talked to whoever, pulled some paperwork, and he come back over there, and we went up in front of the judge, and I'm out of my mind, you know, like I'm still out of my mind. I had done so much meth that I was like, I don't even care. He starts to talk for me and tells him that I want to ask for rehab, and I said, I don't mean any disrespect, but this guy doesn't know me from Adam. May I please speak on my own behalf? And the judge is like, stands all yours. I said, I've got 2 kids out there wondering where the fuck I'm at. Wondering where I'm at. I've got a whole life that I could be living right now. I said, you send me home today, I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to die. I don't have a home to go to, you know. I'm going to die. So he was like, well, you realize you're going to have to sit here until a bed opens up. That's fine. Y'all feed me well. Granger County makes homemade bread. It's really good. I really want the recipe even today. So I didn't care. I went back to my cell. I cried for 4 hours. Something spoke through me. G-O-D, the gift of desperation. That's what that means to me, you know, in that moment. Desperation was at its finest in that moment. And for whatever reason, God and something bigger than me knew what he was doing, you know. And so I sat there for another 2 or so weeks, went to court again. They found me a halfway house in Knoxville. They said, you'll go to this program. It's a 6-month program. You'll graduate the program. And then you'll just continue to pay your fines and fees here, yada, yada. I said, okay. I signed the paperwork. I went and sat down on the edge. And I was like, shit. I know as soon as I get released from here, they're going to run an NCIC on me. I know how these little counties work, and I know what this is going to look like. And a warrant's going to pop up. So I said, Your Honor, I have something else. And he said, what's that? I said, I have a warrant in Hamlin County. I didn't tell him about Hawkins County because it's a completely different district. I have a warrant in Hamlin County. I'm not going to go do a 6-month program and then have to go back to jail. Let's just get it all done. He texts the judge right then in Hamlin County. He says, I have Miss Allison here. She just admitted that she has a warrant. She's in custody. What do you want to do? He says, she'll come see me before she goes to that sober living in Knoxville. About 2 days before I get released, I go to court in Hamlin County. He says, you so much as chew bubble gum at the wrong time and get discharged, you will come back here for 100% of 1129. If you've ever been to Hamlin County Jail, you do not want to spend 1 day, let alone 1 year, right? It is overpopulated, and it's disgusting, and it is horrible. So I said, yes, sir. And I went back to the old paddy wagon, and back to Granger County I went. And a couple days later, they called my name, told me to pack house. I went, the guy drove me, the cop, whatever, drove me to East Knoxville, right off Magnolia. And he says, honey, you better be careful here. These are some bad parts. I said, I think I can handle my own. I've been around a couple places. That program saved my life. And the work that I put in, my willingness, and the fact that I was able to get honest with myself and step out of denial and stop blaming everybody for my problems and hold myself accountable and taking responsibility for my own behavior and actions changed the whole trajectory of my life. I spent about 13 months there. About 3 weeks into that program, I got told about myself, and I come in. The deal was that there was a curfew. You had to work a job, you had to pay your rent, and you had to go to mandatory 4 meetings a week, and you had to go to the house meeting every week. I walked in about 5 minutes late to the house meeting, and the director there was like, where have you been? And I said, at work. And I was super egotistical and prideful and arrogant and stupid. And she said, where's your meeting sheet? And I pulled it out, and it looked like it'd been run through the mud, and there was like 2 meetings on there. She said, where's the rest of it? I said, man, I ain't going to these fucking meetings. It's a cult. People chant. Coffee's horrible. Like every excuse under the sun. And she was like, when was the last time you finished something? And I had to think about it. I was like, 2008, my GED. She said 11 years ago. Congratulations. And that was the thing, like she had to make me think to shut me up. And she said, started giving more excuses about not wanting to go and all these rules and all these things that I had to do. And she said, let me ask you this. How many hours are in a week? I said, I don't know. Who knows that, you know? And she said, 168, and I'm asking for 4. And she got me again. And so that was like a turning point at the very beginning. After that, I had to prove something. So I started going to 9, 10 NA meetings a week, you know, and bringing people with me and doing all this service work. Service work helped me so much at first. Doing anything outside of myself to help somebody else it gave me responsibility and purpose. And I hadn't had that in a long time. And so I just stayed the course and I did all this service work. And about 5.5 months into the program, or me being clean actually, I blew up in another house meeting, and I was the house leader at the time, and I wanted to get high. She could tell that there was something wrong with me, and she says, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I want to get high. Fuck this house," you know. And her husband, now they weren't married yet, but he took me for a walk, and he told me, "Stephanie, you've got to get a sponsor and you've got to work the steps. You are so externally clean. There's nothing more clean that you can't get any more clean externally, but you are still so internally toxic. It's an internal job, you know." And I took his advice and I got a sponsor, and I slowly started working the 12 steps. I stayed there from that point until I got through step 6. And I'll say this, and I work in Narcotics Anonymous program still to this day. There's a stigma in the rooms that step 4 is treacherous and that it's so horrible. And step 6, I'm going to tell you, is by far worse than step 4. Step 4 is identifying your patterns and writing it all out and talking it all out and then breaking the cycle. Step 6 is like asking a God of your understanding to remove these character defects. I had all the character defects, every one of them. And it's funny, my favorite question in step 6 is, without these character defects, how do you think your life would be? I would have other character defects. I'm human, you know? So I stayed through that point, and I got an apartment. And I'll say this, early on in recovery, in the first few months, I filled out my FAFSA because I wanted to do everything different. Every single thing different. And I started going to Pellissippi right there on Magnolia. You know, I started walking there or whatever I needed to do. And I went for business. And I didn't finish my degree. I stayed the course for about 2.5 years. Dropped out or withdrew. And when I was working at a treatment facility. So when I moved out of the halfway house, I was working at a factory, stayed there a couple of months, and then I got into working at nights at a treatment facility, and going to school. So that was really helpful. I moved up to 4 different positions in the treatment facility, and so I didn't continue school. And I went from night shift tech to daytime tech to case manager to admissions intake to facilities manager. And then I quit and I started working with Sam. And I went straight into case management because that's my strong point, right? So after all this stuff, I will say this, that within the first 2.5, 3 years, I got off all 3 probations. I paid 4 out of 5 counties off that I owed, and I'm still paying on Hamlin County. Ugh, I hate that county. But I paid my $25 a month. I got my license back that I hadn't had in 11 years. I had to have an interlock device for 15 months. A good old blow and go. And then I got custody back of my children after going from the halfway house to the apartment to a 3-bedroom house out here in Maynardville. That one topped the cake, you know, and nobody thought. I can remember my attorney asking me, "What took you so long?" I said, "I had to build a foundation. I had 20 years versus 2 to bring 2 children that had been through enough back home with me. No, I had to make sure that I could be a permanent fixture in my own existence in order to be one for anybody else, you know. It's important. And today I have a little over 5 years clean, and I'm back in school for social work. And I just started a new job working remotely as a utilization review specialist all over the nation. And my kids are doing wonderful. AB students. I got a football player in high school over here in Union County, and I've got my daughter's a percussionist in the band, and we've established a life, and I've had them back home for a little over 2 years. And I will end it with this. I couldn't have done this without Narcotics Anonymous. The 12 steps, sponsorship, meetings, fellowship, service work. Without that, I couldn't have done it.